and then it shall be free.
What's up, everybody? It's Young Kier with Day 6 of the Metal Gear Solid 5 Countdown Retrospective. Can you believe it? Less than a week to go. For today's retrospective, let's look back to the events and the barrage of information leading up to the announcement of Ground Zeroes' release date. Following the exciting announcements during and after E3 2013, on August 29th, 2013, Kojima posted a tweet teasing that he'd be giving a gameplay presentation at the Kojima Productions LA studio opening event the following week. Then, on September 3rd, IGN editor Mitch Dyer posted various tweets hinting that the event will likely take place sometime on September 4th or 5th, Wednesday and Thursday respectively. 2 days later, on September 5th, NeoGAF user VomitGod posted confirmation that the embargo on the materials and information presented during the event will be lifted on Friday, September 6th, 2013 at 12:01 a.m. And just like he said, on that date, a barrage of new information regarding Ground Zeroes flooded the internet. On this date, we would learn for the first time about the major changes made to traditional gameplay features and mechanics for MGS5, such as regenerating health, marking, reflex mode, the iDroid, new interrogation features, new D-pad-based item selection, helicopter extraction, the return of the night vision thermal goggles, the return of the exclamation mark and various famous sound cues, and more. But it would not be until Tokyo Game Show 2013, from September 19th to September 21st, that Kojima would show off Ground Zeroes demonstrations to the public, the next-gen versions no less. Multiple variations of the demo were shown throughout TGS 2013, so I went ahead and posted links to all of them in the description below. Check them out if you'd like to reminisce. Following the event, a barrage of information began to flood the internet regarding both Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain, starting with an article published by Eurogamer on September 20th, 2013. Here, Kojima confirmed for the first time that the torture scenes in the game will not be playable. Then, on September 21st, 2013, Kotaku posted an article translating Kojima's post-TGS 2013 interview with Famitsu, in which he confirmed that he does want the cardboard box to return. While this wouldn't happen for Ground Zeroes, Phantom Pain would come to embrace the iconic item in full. Then, Japanese website GameWatch posted an article on September 22nd detailing their interview with Hideo Kojima, where he discussed a variety of topics. I actually made a video about it at the time, so here are the highlights. The following information comes courtesy of an interview between Hideo Kojima and Japanese website GameWatch. YouTube user Pokemon Smosh offered to help me translate the entire article. The first topic of conversation was cinematography. When asked about the long shot from the intro cinematic of Ground Zeroes, which didn't contain a single cut before transitioning into gameplay, Kojima confirmed that most of the game's cutscenes will be executed in this format. He wanted the same camera that sits behind Snake during gameplay to be the one to display all the cutscenes, almost like filming a giant play. Kojima's reasoning behind this was that long shots with perfect transitions really show off the fact that the game is open world with no strings attached. The next topic of conversation revolved around the game's AI. Kojima states that while a limited AI was acceptable in past games due to their linearity, the AI in Metal Gear Solid 5 has to be top-notch in order to function in an open-world environment. Kojima acknowledges that the AI is still dumb as hell at this present moment, but promises that they will be vastly improved when the game launches. Kojima is then prompted about the appearance of 80s weapons, to which he replies by stating that weapons will indeed be based on ones found in that era. This leads to Kojima talking about customizable helicopters and the role that they play in Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain. Those who've watched my previous videos may remember that only one chopper can be called in during Ground Zeroes missions. The reason for this in a story perspective, according to Kojima, has to do with the UN's nuclear inspection. The inspection also somehow interferes with the ability to use the photon recovery system, meaning that in Ground Zeroes, players recruit by physically carrying soldiers to the extraction chopper. In the Phantom Pain, players can call in any number of choppers as long as players can afford it, which can be bought and customized through the game's fully integrated base management system. Furthermore, in the Phantom Pain, the photon recovery system can be used to recruit in large volumes at a time, and recruitment in general will play a much larger role. Another difference is that the Phantom Pain features a full day and night cycle during missions, meaning players can tackle any mission at any time of the day, while Ground Zeroes restricts certain missions to certain times of the day. But the biggest difference by far is that according to Hideo Kojima, the Phantom Pain is 300 times the size of Ground Zeroes if you compare the combined map sizes and features of each. In the next portion of the interview, Kojima addresses concerns that people have been having over new mechanics like tagging, bullet time, and the threat ring, taking away from the franchise's originality. Kojima responds by saying that he himself did not want to include some of these features initially, features such as tagging and bullet time. Wanting to create an immersive and photorealistic game, he felt as though some of these features would take away from that. He too was a naysayer like many concerned parties right now. That was until he saw the game in action without these features. According to Kojima, multiple playtest sessions showed that players would become very frustrated at how much easier it was to be detected compared to past games due to the open-world nature of Metal Gear Solid 5. It was after many playtest sessions that Kojima was convinced that features like tagging and bullet time need to be added to ease frustration and balance gameplay while maintaining challenge. After adding these features, Kojima found gameplay to be much more satisfying, balanced, and cohesive, even if it stripped a bit of the realism and immersion. Kojima also addressed those saying that the game was copying the mechanics of others. Kojima responds by saying that while certain mechanics like tagging and bullet time may look similar when you look at them individually, they actually feel quite different when used together with the entirety of this tactical stealth simulation game and its open world. You may be pleased to know that Kojima is hoping to add some advanced options that will allow players to deactivate certain game mechanics like tagging and bullet time for a more immersive and hardcore experience. We've already seen stuff like this done in past games in the form of higher difficulty modes, so the addition of such a feature would not surprise me at all. Kojima confirms that jumping is a context-sensitive action, similar to climbing a ladder. As for why Kojima decided to add a jump feature, his response was that the game's open-world nature required Snake to be more mobile and to be able to overcome more obstacles. A simple mechanic like jumping can give players much more flexibility in ways of tackling a specific mission. The game would not focus on simulating life, but rather on simulating operations and encouraging players to strategize. Although Kojima did start talking about animals making a return and briefly referenced Metal Gear Solid 3's food capture feature, only to say that he can't say anything about it. Another topic of discussion was the iDroid, which Kojima confirms as being the game's main menu. From this device, players can access vital information and features like maps, mission objectives, and extraction point markers without pausing the game. Kojima does note, however, that players cannot move at all while using the iDroid, so it is encouraged to find a safe spot before using the device. The interviewee also asks about ways to distract enemies, inquiring particularly about elements from past games, such as being able to use porn magazines to distract enemies. In response, Kojima states that he doesn't want to include elements that take away from the game's heavy themes and tone. He didn't flat out say no, but he seemed to be suggesting that porn magazines as infiltration items won't fit into his vision of the game. That doesn't mean that humor is completely gone from the game, as Kojima does hint that the game will include stupid and silly side missions, just nothing along the lines of Peace Walker's ridiculous Puyan missions. Overall, he's being much more careful about what to include and what to leave out. Kojima even considered scrapping the franchise's iconic yet unrealistic exclamation mark and alert sound until the rest of his team brought him back to his senses. His team argued that not only are these elements too iconic to go away, but that they are also needed to inform players of enemy status, especially since the game is now open world. Speaking of open worlds, a big part of the interview revolved around the game's missions and mission locations. Like in Peace Walkers, players will choose missions through a mission selection menu, which players can access in this game by getting in a chopper. Those playing Ground Zeroes will be confined to one location, Camp Omega, but once players dive deep into the Phantom Pain, they'll be able to choose from a variety of locations all over the world, like Afghanistan, along with various African countries. Just don't expect to visit any metropolitan areas like, say, New York. According to Kojima, types of locations include confined areas like deserts and jungles, along with off-the-radar facilities and bases, all fortified and away from most civilians. Players can expect to become quite familiar with these massive open worlds as they revisit them to tackle each location's many main and side missions, which are all replayable with challenges to fulfill and ranks to earn. And for the hardcore looking for even more challenges, Kojima confirmed that many of the game's side missions will be significantly more difficult than the main missions, missions, since they are optional. He also stated that completing some of these main and side missions will somehow directly influence Snake's main base. While he doesn't go into too much detail, he seems to be suggesting that players will be able to physically see their base evolve and expand, similar to Mother Base from Peace Walker. There are a lot of great additions to the game's mission structure, but some of you out there may still be concerned that constantly revisiting these open-world locations could get repetitive. Do not worry, Kojima reassured that map sizes are absolutely humongous in scale. With each visit, players can expect to find new areas and secrets within these giant sandboxes, and they can expect to find themselves in different situations and circumstances, or tackling missions in different ways based on the time of day and the influence that past missions may have had on the game world. Also interesting to note is that unlike in previous games, players will have access to multiple new main and side missions at a time, and best of all, they can be tackled in any order. This may raise concerns for those who are heavily invested in the narrative, but that too is something that Kojima is approaching differently with Metal Gear Solid 5. Kojima compared past Metal Gear Solid games to movies, while comparing his upcoming game to a TV series. Similarly, in this game, each mission or episode that players tackle will give them pieces of the core story that they can put together as they complete more missions. One question that gamers have been asking constantly is whether Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain will be sold separately or together. In this interview, Kojima avoids the question once again, but he does say that he'd like people to play Ground Zeroes first before diving into the Phantom Pain. The topic of DLC was discussed at some point. While it is something that Kojima is contemplating, he does ensure that he won't leave bits and pieces out of the final release on purpose just for the sake of getting a DLC out. The interview also goes briefly into the differences between current-gen and next-gen versions of the game. While core gameplay mechanics are identical, the next-gen versions of the game will offer graphical fidelity and services that current-generation consoles cannot offer. In terms of graphics, the next-gen versions will offer gameplay at a smooth 60 frames per second, with much more detailed textures, smoother polygons, and advanced lighting. In terms of services, Hideo Kojima hints at taking advantage of new features like cloud service and integration with tablets and smartphones, but he doesn't go into much more detail. The last topic of discussion revolved around the recently revealed Japanese voice actor for Revolver Ocelot, which leads into Kojima revealing a small detail about the character. According to him, while most characters in the game are experiencing some kind of inner struggle or pain, Ocelot stands as one of few neutral characters whose motivations don't revolve around emotions like pain, anger, or revenge. And with that, I would like to conclude this news update, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. The barrage of news continued even after September. On October 17th, 2013, website IGN published an interview with Hideo Kojima in which he would further discuss his upcoming project.
ペインという大きな、メタルギアがあって、でグランドゼロはそのプロローグの章の名前になります。で、それ以降の1章から始まる本編っていうのは非常に広大な、オープンワールドなんで、メタルギアのユーザーがいきなりそこに行くよりもワンクッション置く、一種の、オープンワールドになったメタルギアソリッドがどういう形であるかっていうのをコンパクトなっているのがそのプロローグであるグランドゼロズになります。
Kept you waiting, huh?
これまでのメタルギアっていうのはどっちかというと、リニアなゲームでプレイヤーがこういう順序で行ってもらってその前方に敵を配置してたんですけども、オープンワールドにすると、それこそ、水平方向じゃなくて下とか上から360度から見られていると敵兵で、それでやると、どこから自分が誰に見つかったかわからないような状況が結構な頻度で、そういう状況があったので、まずどこで誰に見つかったかっていうのを、プレイヤーに教えてあげたいというのがあって、でそれを、潜入モードの時はワンチャンスということでハイスピードになって、その時、その見つかった兵士を、一定時間以内に対処すると、見つかったことにならないっていうそういうルールをだからあれだけを見ると簡単には見えますけど実際にゲームプレイしてみるとそうではないと思います。あんまり、前作作ったのでそれで反省して今度はこうしようっていうのは、そういう作り方は全然してなくて、もう一度、その時点で自分がやりたいことを入れていってるだけなんですけどね。 というかその4の時はもうテクノロジー的に結構きつかったので、マルチジェネレーションでいけるようなエンジンを作ろうということで FOX エンジンを、作りました。でその時一番やっぱオープンワールドっていうのを目指したかったので、そのためにエンジンも作って、で今回は、グランドゼルズは結構小さいところですけども、26年ぐらい前に本当にやりたかったメタルギアっていうのは、雨が降ってる中スネークが潜入してサーチライトがガーッと当たると影がグッと伸びるっていう、それを26年前にテクノロジー的にできなかったことを、今回メタルギアソリッド5を作ってるというところなので、いわゆるコンソールだけの今プレゼンテーションしかしてませんけど、本当のメタルギアソリッド5っていうのはそこだけではないです。今の時点っていうか、永遠に制限はあると思うので、当然そのテクノロジーが上がって、それでもできないことは残りますし、逆に言うといろんなことができるようになって、それを全部作り込むっていうのも不可能なんで、必ず何かを選択しないと5年後6年後の未来非常に今は、近い状況になっています。
Kojima had also done an interview with website Polygon, and they released their article on October 23rd, 2013. There, he provided some further insight into the kind of game that MGS5 is. Here are a few quotes worth highlighting. I think the term open world has taken on a life of its own and caused misunderstandings. Of course, it's not going to be a game where Snake fishes all day or changes jobs and pursues a different life. The game map is an open world and you have freedom in that way, but in MGS5, it's clear what you're doing. That may be I have to help someone, or destroy this thing, or go gather intelligence at this spot. Some missions will have time limits too. With MGS up to now, we could only build the interior of wherever you were infiltrating. How you got there was shown in a cutscene, and the player would just suddenly be in front of the entrance. Once you finished the mission, there'd be another cutscene. A helicopter or whatever would come by and you would escape. It's not that linear games are bad, but really it'd be fun if you were the one thinking about how and where to infiltrate, what sort of equipment to bring, and how to get out of there. I think the way that MGS is combined with an open world here is something that we haven't really communicated very well yet. In particular, with this game, we are building the control system and working the visual expressions for a global market to meet the needs of the North American market. That may have an impact on things too, but once you try it out, you should be able to feel like, yes, this is MGS. I feel that games are interactive media, and the rush comes in being able to use what you're given freely to play. Open worlds create that for you, and I think the future of gaming lies in them. He mentioned a few other things, but they are stuff people were familiar with by now. A few days later, on October 25th, I actually uncovered some information from an old Hide Radio podcast episode that a lot of people had missed, which I went ahead and translated. In that episode of Hide Radio, Kojima hinted for the first time at the existence of a support buddy system. Here are the highlights for the translation video I made. The following information comes from a Hide Radio podcast released after E3. The first new and interesting bit of information that came out of this Hide Radio podcast episode revolves around the ability for Snake to commence an operation with a, quote, buddy. That's right, folks, Snake can actually bring a companion with him in certain missions, and this buddy can wear the same equipment as Snake does. Unfortunately, he does not go into much detail other than what I've just mentioned, but he does show an unreleased concept art drawn by Yoji Shinkawa to everyone during the podcast, showing off Snake and a companion. Unfortunately, the podcast was only streamed with audio, so there is no way to know what the concept art looks like until Kojima decides to show it. The only hint we really get is that Snake's buddy is cute, according to Ms. Okajima. Something else I am curious about is whether this buddy will be strictly AI or if another player will be able to join the operation for a co-op experience. The next bit of information is more of a confirmation for one of my previous theories. When I analyzed this particular scene during the Red Band trailer analysis, I made the assumption that this wasn't fancy editing or anything like that, but rather actual in-game footage of Metal Gear Solid 5's time fast-forward feature, similar to the waiting feature from Elder Scrolls games. In this Hide Radio podcast, Kojima actually confirmed this to be true. He says that Snake can shift the time forward when smoking cigars, and that this trailer shows what this gameplay feature actually actually looks like in-game. In other words, what we are looking at here is a live loading screen of sorts that shows the passage of time as Snake waits for a designated time of the day, and based on Kojima's words, the feature is activated when players use the cigar. And finally, as far as new information goes, it was revealed that the game's Afghanistan map will be geographically based on Jordan. And that's about it as far as new information goes.
Alright, so with the month of October out of the way, let's talk about November and December, two very important months for Ground Zeroes. It would be on November 4th, 2013, that Konami and Kojima Productions would finally announce the spring 2014 release window for Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. The Xbox 360 and PS3 versions were given a retail price of $19.99 for digital copies and $29.99 for physical copies, while Xbox One and PS4 versions were given a price tag of $29.99 for digital copies. Physical versions for next gen would be revealed at a later date. So this announcement finally confirmed that Ground Zeroes would be sold separately from Phantom Pain. More Ground Zeroes announcements followed on November 15th, 2013 during the PlayStation 4 launch event. It was on this date that the PlayStation exclusive Deja Vu mission was first announced through a brand new trailer.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Following this announcement, Sean Icestone hosted episode 7 of the Kojima Productions Alert podcast, which was published on November 18th, 2013. And there, they provided a lot of information and clarifications regarding Ground Zeroes. Here are the highlights.
All right, everybody, welcome to the KP Alert, episode number 7. This is your host, Sean Icestone, here with Ken Mendoza.
So we also announced our exclusive mission for Sony, the Deja Vu mission. Some memories from the past, from MGS1,
some
baby.
Very cool flashback. It's very exciting, and I think the Deja Vu mission is something, it's a special treat for Sony. It's a Sony exclusive mission. Then also we announced release date and the new title for the game.
Spring 2014, first off.
Yep.
And what is going to be released in spring 2014?
Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes.
So that's the official title. Take note, everyone.
Yep. And we had a lot of big news. Obviously, we also announced that Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes will be separate from Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. We went out with that news a couple weeks back. This is something that we've been putting out for a long time, right? Trying to get across this concept that Ground Zeroes is the prologue to The Phantom Pain. So, the whole concept is that Ground Zeroes will kind of work to get you used to the new system that we're going to be implementing into Phantom Pain. It's not the complete open world system that you're going to get in Phantom Pain. It's kind of to ease you in. It's more of a traditional Metal Gear Solid experience, but put into an open world environment, right? So people can kind of get used to how the mission structures will work, get used to the new user interface, get used to the new controls, because a lot of stuff has changed. And to help guide you through that, we also released a narrated gameplay video, which takes place in the same stage as the main Ground Zeroes mission. So we revealed that video earlier. The daylight mission takes place in that same area, but during daylight, so people can see how gameplay can change depending on the time of day and weather. So if you haven't checked it out, be sure to look for that. It's online right now.
What are you waiting for? Go out and check it out already.
All right, so look forward to spring 2014, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, coming out for PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. So no matter what you got, you'll be able to get this game. So what's the first question, Ken?
What's all this Ground Zero stuff? I mean, you say it's a prologue. Can I just skip it and go straight into Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain?
No, Ken, no.
Why not?
No, because Ground Zeroes is an integral part of the Metal Gear Solid 5 experience, fool.
Are you trying to tell me I wouldn't get the whole thing if I don't play Ground Zeroes?
That is correct.
What do you think about our marking skills? Please let us know in the comment section.
Yeah, and by the way, there's a reason why we're not actors. But anyway, the point is, you need to get both if you want the entire experience. As we said, Ground Zeroes serves to set up a story, serves to introduce you to the overall world that we're presenting in Phantom Pain. So you'll definitely want to get both.
An integral part of the story, as well as getting used to the controls. Yeah, you can get used to Phantom Pain, but you'll be waiting some time. I will recommend Ground Zeroes. And again, it's not as if you only play like one mission. It has several things. It's a game on its own.
Yeah,
so I think it's pretty fun.
Several hours of gameplay, and it gives you a sneak peek at what you're going to get from Phantom Pain. And it is a different product. The same stuff that's in Ground Zeroes will not be in the Phantom Pain. So you should definitely play it and get yourself ready for the Phantom Pain.
Next, it was in the daylight mission and the stuff that you narrated, but a lot of people have been asking about the reflex mode. I mean, there's a lot of controversy. Can you turn it off? What's the whole purpose of putting it there?
Well, first of all, what is reflex mode? I think a lot of people may not know. So this time, we put in this new feature in the game that we're calling reflex mode, which kind of simulates Snake's lightning quick reflexes. So when he notices something odd, like you're about to be spotted by an enemy, you have a split second where the action kind of slows down to simulate his instinctive reaction to being spotted, and you have an instant to react and keep an alert from being sounded. So you can look for the enemy, take him out really quickly and silently, and that'll keep you from triggering an alert. That said, I know a lot of people were saying, well, won't that game make the game a lot easier? It feels kind of too light, for hardcore Metal Gear fans. So, first thing I want to say is this is completely optional. There is an option within the game where you can turn this off. So people who don't want to use it, feel free to turn it off. And there actually will be bonuses for clearing missions without using reflex mode. But that said, the reason why we put it in is that this time the world is very different.
It was kind of necessary.
It is because, in the past, each stage within Metal Gear was handcrafted, to give the player a certain experience. We knew exactly where the enemies would be placed, what angles this player would be sighted from, no matter where they were in the game, because the game was much smaller than it is now. Once you open that up to an open world environment like Ground Zeroes, the Phantom Pain, really, it's huge. There aren't always obstacles around you, which means that there may be enemies riding by, on a Jeep or walking around doing patrols or on a tower or on a mountain. You never know. People can spot you from any angle. And we just want to make sure that players didn't feel cheated by being spotted when they were facing the other direction.
Yeah, it can get really frustrating. You can get spotted from anywhere 360 degrees. So I think it's something really fair that the team wanted to put in there. It changes the way Metal Gear Solid works so far, but you feel it when you play it. It makes sense.
Yeah, and one thing that we do want to stress is that it's not. It doesn't make the game easier. It just helps to balance things out.
Yes.
But that said, if you are a really hardcore player and you feel that you don't need it,
turn it off.
Prove
how badass you are.
The game would be much more challenging, and you will be rewarded for doing so. So try it out.
And also, people have been asking about the marking system again. First, what's the marking system? Why is it in there?
Okay, marking system. So people have seen this. We've been putting out gameplay video from Ground Zeroes for a while now, both Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain, and people have noticed that when you lock onto an enemy, it adds a mark, right? You see a little triangle appear above their head. What that does really is it adds that enemy position to your radar, puts them into your map basically, right? And also makes them visible on screen. And the reason why we put this in there is that we no longer have the Salt on radar system, right? In the past, we've always had the on-screen UI, which showed where enemies are. It showed if there's an enemy around a corner, you of course wouldn't dash out, in front of that enemy because they're around the corner. But now that we've eliminated all these UI elements to try and make, the game feel more realistic and kind of smooth out the experience, you can't tell if there's somebody around that corner unless we use this kind of marking system. So what you have to do, and this is part of the strategy, is you have to plan your infiltration. So the strategy that you should use is from a distance, use your binoculars to scope out the area, mark enemies, and then as you sneak into the base, you'll be able to spot them easier and know where they're at within the base, and you'll know not to dash out in front of an enemy. And you'll notice that we have that silhouette that you can see through objects to let you know where the enemies are once you've marked them. That said, again, this is completely optional, and you don't have to mark enemies if you don't want to. Another thing that we want to point out is that it's very different from the way that marking is used in other games. I know some people may have said, well, Splinter Cell had marking. Is it similar to that? And no, it's not. Splinter Cell used the marking system as a way to mark and execute enemies. That's not what Metal Gear is about at all. It's all about trying to get through the base, sneak into the base without interacting with the enemies. This is only used for intel. It's for gathering intel, scoping out the area, and planning your strategy, and that's what it's used for. Again, it's a completely separate system from the reflex mode, again, which I think there was a lot of confusion about. Are these marking system and are the marking system and reflex mode related somehow? And the answer is no. The reflex mode is there to help you out when you get spotted. Marking systems to help prevent you from being spotted. So it's two different things.
In other words, you can turn off reflex mode and keep marking system on, and vice versa. So you can try several things here.
So just play with the options, balance it however you want. If you want the marking system and not reflex, or vice versa, feel free to adjust it the way you want.
We've been saying that Ground Zeroes is a prologue. How long is the game? Is it only one mission? Is it just like one mission and done?
Okay, so very good question. The answer is no, it's not just one mission. There are several missions in Ground Zeroes, and we've shown off a few of them so far. I think we've shown off, at least some footage from night missions, some from the day missions, and of course we now have the Deja Vu mission. So, we're not going to reveal the exact number of missions at this point yet, but rest assured that there's a good amount of gameplay within the Ground Zeroes package, and it's not something that you'll get through within just a couple hours. So you'll be playing for a long time, and if you want to really explore everything, there are a lot of side missions, side objectives, and if you want to do all that, then that, of course, multiplies your gameplay value as well. So there's a lot to do, bottom line.
I'm talking about a lot. Also, a lot of people have been pointing that out. There's a lot of lens flare in the trailers that we have seen so far, we have released so far. What's the lens flare about? Is there enough lens flare in there?
We don't have enough lens flares, Ken.
We need more lens flare.
We need more lens flares.
Yeah, but there's actually a functionality for the lens flare. There's a reason it is there. I don't know if there's a reason to justify that much lens flare, but
you can never have too many lens flares, Ken. That's the point. But no, seriously, lens flares are cool, but as Ken pointed out, they're not just a pretty effect. There actually is a gameplay purpose for having these lens flares in there. And when you're sneaking around at night, these lens flares actually serve to provide a hint to the player about when you're about to be spotted. So if you're crawling around and you notice a lens flare effect on Snake, that means, and you hear the cool sound effect, that means you're about to be spotted by a searchlight. So
that's
at that
kind
point,
like cowbell.
Yeah, kind of like a cowbell. So at that point, you just hit the ground and stay still, hide, lay low for a little while, and once the lens flare disappears, that means, okay, you're safe and you can move on. So there is a gameplay purpose for these lens flares as well, aside from just looking really damn cool.
And also, this is not necessarily from the fans, but I think Hideo has been talking about it. So there's a chopper in the game. What's a chopper doing there? Do you have as many choppers as you want? Can you just, how do you call it, the chopper?
I think this was a couple questions combined into one. But so in Ground Zeroes, certain missions require you to call a chopper that'll come in, and you can use the chopper for various things, like, rescuing people or rescuing yourself, escaping from the base, etc., etc. In Ground Zeroes, there is just one chopper, and there's a reason for that, which you'll understand once you actually play Ground Zeroes. We're not going to say any spoilers right now. But you can call the chopper from your iDroid, which is what we're calling the little terminal that Snake carries around. You can open that up and choose a landing zone, right? And a chopper will come to pick you up. And, if you've also may have noticed by looking at the gameplay videos, depending on which landing zone you choose, there are different risk factors. Certain landing zones may be hot, which means you'll take fire from anti-aircraft guns, etc., and you may lose your chopper. Other places are safe. Of course, it's a balancing act, because if you choose it to call the chopper into a safe area, it'll be safe, but it's in the middle of nowhere, which means you have to carry your hostage for halfway across the stage to get to a safe area, or you can try to call the chopper into a slightly high risk area, but get there quicker.
Imagine the poor guy in the chopper. You're trying to rescue the legendary Snake, but the jerk decides to call you in the middle of Dude, I would hate you so much. That would be so you're asking me to get killed, Just go to a place where there are no enemies. Right. That's where I'm a goddamn chopper. I need to land. Well,
that said, though, if you're good enough, you can call the chopper into a high risk area and still have them survive. So
Yeah.
you have to provide cover for the chopper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to. That's where you have to be really good. Don't be a jerk with a
Yeah.
poor
So
helicopter guy.
don't kill the poor helicopter pilot. He's very loyal to Snake,
Because-
and you don't want to be mean to him.
And that's the other thing. There's only one guy. There's only
There's
one
only
chopper.
one guy, only
If
one
your chopper
chopper.
gets shut down, that's it.
That's it.
You
Then
know, it's not like you can just call another chopper.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that actually makes sense with the story. There's a reason for that. So all I want to say is, be nice with the chopper guy.
Yeah. So in Ground Zero is just one chopper. However, for the Phantom Pain, you have the option of having
Don't spoil it. Don't
choppers.
spoil it.
A lot of
Sean.
choppers. Yeah. So people that played Peace Walker may kind of have an idea of what we're thinking, but yeah, you have the ability to customize your army. And there are various different types of choppers as well. So look forward to that in Phantom Pain. But for Ground Zeroes, scale back just a little bit. One chopper, so use them wisely.
Also, something that is also being raised a lot by the people that are sending their feedback in those videos. It seems like you just get an automatic headshot. It looks fairly easy, honestly.
Yeah. So this is again something that I think we need to clarify. There is no auto lock headshot. Each headshot that's being done in the game is being aimed properly. So
There's someone that put a lot
there's
of
somebody
skill,
putting a lot of-
time, tears, and blood.
exactly, and
into
the only
getting that
reason it
headshot.
looks so good is that we have our lead level designer Yoshike-san, known in the office as Let's, and he's our professional player. So whenever we take these gameplay videos, it's usually Let's at the control, and he's really good at this. I mean, he's the one who made it, so he knows how it works. And anyway, the bottom line is, there's no auto lock on people's heads. You have to aim properly.
Yeah, unless you want Let's in your home aiming for you, you'll have to aim yourself.
Yeah.
And I can testify it's pretty hard to get a headshot.
And another thing that we should point out, and this was mentioned in the narrative video a little bit, is that there's also something new in this game that hasn't been in previous Metal Gear games, which is bullet drop. So each weapon has a certain effective range, and that's indicated by the reticule on the screen. If it's red, that means you're in the effective range and you can aim straight for the person's head. But if you're out of range, then that reticule will actually appear white, which means you have to compensate for the drop of the bullet by matching the notches on the reticule.
Yep.
It's kind of like simulates an iron sight. We have to compensate for the range. Of course, lower powered weapons like the trank gun are more susceptible to bullet drop, and you'll notice a lot more. If you use something like a sniper rifle, of course, the bullet drop is minimal unless you're very, very far away. But there is this new system in there which may take some getting used to. I think people, when they first play it, they may be wondering, why can't I get a headshot? So it's the exact opposite. It's not that easy. In fact, I think people who are used to playing people without this, games without this kind of bullet drop system may be aiming straight at the guy's head and wonder, why am I not getting a headshot? And it's because you have to compensate for bullet drop. So keep that in mind. It's not easy. It's very challenging, but it's very fun once you get used to it.
So pretty much you'll have to play this show again and keep it somewhere in your memory of your computer so you can play again once Spring 2014 hits. Because we're giving a lot of hints for gameplay.
Yep. All right, and that wraps it up for the codec and our show this time. And we'll be updating you soon with more news.
After the podcast aired, little bits of teasers of information would be provided until finally, on December 9th, 2013, the pivotal day came when Ground Zeroes' release date would be announced. March 18th, 2014 for North America, March 20th, 2014 for Europe, and March 21st, 2014 for the UK. To celebrate, Konami and Kojima Productions released a brand new trailer, this time showcasing exclusive content for Xbox consoles, the Jamais Vu mission.
Boss, we got an urgent request to investigate unusual activity at the U.S. Naval facility in Cuba. They lost all contact with the base shortly after a Soviet commuter jet crashed into the coast nearby. The plane's at the bottom of the ocean now, but before it sank, something escaped the wreckage and made it to shore. Signs indicate that the base has been taken over by some unknown entity. Intelligent beings that attack people and steal their identities. That's right, boss. Body snatchers. But we've got a secret weapon. A man from another world. A dark, distant future. A man made into a war machine with no human body for those bastards to snatch. Eliminate any and all snatchers occupying the Cuban naval base and prison camp. There's no telling what'll happen to the world if you lose. The fate of the human race is in your hands, Raiden. As payment, all we need to do is hand over the XOF badges you've gathered on your missions.
Alongside that, a new gameplay trailer was released for Ground Zeroes explaining the basics of the game. Then, it would be a day later on December 10th, 2013, that Konami would announce that the next-gen versions of Ground Zeroes would be getting physical copies, retailing at $40. And thus, the year 2013 ended on a high note with clear confirmation of Ground Zeroes' release date, versions, and prices. I remember thinking at the time that 2014 never seemed so far away. So with that, I would like to end Day 6 of the Metal Gear Solid 5 Countdown Retrospective. Thank you for tuning in. Let us know in the comments below what your train of thought was as the days led up to the Ground Zeroes release date announcement. And to be further updated on the MGS5 Countdown Retrospective, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.